The magnets I use for these pickups have a 195 thousandths of an inch diameter to them, and although the flat work I buy is specifically made for that dimension, I've always found them to be a little too tight for the job, so I ream them out to be 190 thousandths of an inch. I find that gives a nice balance between having a tight friction fit while not warping the material, and here I am doing that on the drill press. From there, it's over to the arbor press where we press the magnets into the holes. It helps to have them a little bit magnetized here. That way you can stick them to the arbor press, line them up, and drive them home. Next, we put the top piece on and tap them gently with, in this case, a fretting mallet. That way they can get started up before they go back into the arbor press. Here we are doing that. Stay tuned for a super satisfying press fit. There it is. That might even be worth looking at one more time. Let's do that again. And it's time for a almost homeopathic dose of crazy glue. Why not? Or CA glue, I should say. Basically a belt and suspenders approach. They're super tight, but you know what? Why not? And here's that process. And some temperature resistant tape around the magnets are a good thing to protect them, and since we are wax potting these things, we don't want the tape to melt or get all sorts of weird on us, and looks pretty good. And from there, it's off to the races. We put in the number of turns we want on the pickup and wrap them with copper wire. In this case, it's 42 gauge poly wire. I think 8,000 turns to get a resistance of about 6 kilo ohms, I think I'm looking for. And here's that process. Really the bottom line is you want to make sure it's tensioned appropriately, and you wind them moving across the guide there to get a uniform, what they call a scatter wind, which apparently makes something magical happen with pickups. And that's what we're doing there. Next step is to charge the Alnico magnets. They come from the factory, in this case, without a charge. Alnico is a fascinating alloy. You can charge it, recharge it, reverse the charge, all that kind of stuff. In this case, these are Alnico 5, so I'm just using a couple of neodymium magnets to charge them, and that's how I do it. Then we have to carefully solder the wire, which is about as fine as a human hair, around a couple of eyelets which connect to the lead wires, and here I am doing that. You can see a clothespin there dangling from the wire just to keep a little tension on there, and a piece of paper in front of the coil just to protect it from any flux that might fly off the solder while we're doing this operation. Fiddly stuff. And speaking of fiddly, this is the base plate. Boy, you really have to heat this thing up to about the temperature that the sun is in order to get the solder to bind and melt. I'm trying to do that with a pool here. I run my soldering iron these days at 500 degrees centigrade for this operation with a bigger tip, just to make the process less painful. Literally, because if you touch the plate while you're doing this, you'll burn yourself. Here it is. It's also resting on some clay, ceramic, just so my bench doesn't necessarily get too damaged there. And from there, I solder on a piece of tinned copper. I don't know how folks do this job with the base plate on the pickup. In other words, soldering the lead wire in there with the base plate on there. Every time I've tried it, I've melted the wax in the pickup. So this is the way I do it. It seems to work okay. And here's a picture. Very nice. And speaking of melting wax, here's my wax melting pot. The idea, basically, we're potting these pickups to replace the air with wax so they don't become microphonic. I've found that with tele pickups with a base plate, they have a tendency to maybe get a little microphonic, maybe a lot microphonic. So what I do is I soak them in wax until the air is all gone. We look at that with the bubbles. And here's my top secret tip here is that I let it cool a little bit with the pickup still in the wax to let the viscosity increase, because what I found is if you take the pickup immediately out, all that wax you just melted in there drains away, and you really want it to stay particularly tightly between the bottom of the pickup and that base plate. So I sit it in there until I can see the lead wires start to have almost what pilots would call rime ice, sort of a frosty look, because as the wax starts to cool, it starts to congeal. And this is a fiddly job, wrapping the string around the pickup. I think tele pickups look really cool with string wrapped around them. It's a traditional look, and here I am doing that all the way around. And the way I secure the string is just with a little CA glue, and I do a little bit of something strange because that, let me back up. I do something a little strange in that because I put the string on after the wax potting, I've always found that the wax sort of makes the string translucent, has a strange look, at least if you're using the lighter color string. I hit it with a coat or two of shellac with a paintbrush, gives it a nice sort of tint, maybe makes it look like it's been in a smoky bar for a long time. And here we are doing that. And last but by no means least, a Kodama water slide decal goes on the bottom. And yes, these decals are just as much of a pain in the ass as they were when you were a kid trying to put them on a model airplane. So yeah, but they look cool, and it's a heck of a lot of fun and a trip back down memory lane of all that great frustration when I was 12 ruining model airplane kits. And that's that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this trip into the world of magic, magnets, and rock and roll. Hope all's well, and thanks again.